with SparkToro, like what we're trying to do is show people where their audiences pay attention so that they can go reach them directly through those sources, right? So you go to SparkToro and you're like, okay, I want to reach whatever, landscape designers in California. What podcasts do they listen to? What YouTube channels are they subscribing to? What websites do they visit? Who do they follow on social accounts? So that you can go do whatever kind of advertising you want, right? It could be through the Google Ad Display Network. It could be through Facebook. It could be through Instagram. It could be direct, one-on-one. Like you find this great podcast, you reach out to the host, you sponsor it. I love that kind of marketing. I love that kind of advertising. And I'm hopeful that over time, SparkToro can help form more of that knowledge for people and fill that gap of, hey, if I'm willing to do the work and like actually go out and find it instead of throwing money at these platforms, can I get a better ROI through that sort of...
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast with your boys, Matt Wolf and Joe Fear.
All right, we're live. How you doing?
Good to be here, Joe and Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I love the look of your place here too. It feels like you're in a cabin in the woods somewhere.
I'm kind of in a cabin, not in the woods, but in out back of my office in Seattle. This little
I dig it.
Oh, that's cool.
Little shed, which I have to use a space heater to stay warm in the winter. But it's great. It's great to have the like separation between the house and the shed. And my wife is a writer. She works from home, so to have our own workspaces, just ideal.
I love it. So you got introduced to us by Buyer. I got to give a shout out because she's amazing. So you did an amazing episode over there, and we probably will touch on some pretty similar stuff because I think it's super important and how to. There's so many people that seem reliant on the big platforms out there. So the Facebooks, the Googles, probably those two specifically. So I think it'd be a fascinating conversation to chat about what the issues are around those two from your perspective, but also how to leverage them and some other cool things. And you have an amazing tool, SparkToro, that taps into those, but also other sites. So I think, it just let's go there. I don't know how to start specifically, other than a little backstory on, because you're deep in content marketing and SEO. So I'd love to hear that.
Happy to fill in sort of my perspective on the I think duopoly advertising problem and then sort of online advertising marketing space in general, right? So my perspective, I started a company called Moz, which a lot of folks in the SEO and web marketing space will be familiar with. Was the CEO of that company for a long time, stepped down and left a couple of years ago to start this new one, SparkToro, which is market research, audience intelligence space. And one of the concerns, one of the big concerns that I was having in the SEO world was basically that Google has been doing this, and in the social media world, Facebook's been doing it too. Both companies have felt like they're hitting a growth plateau in terms of new users they can get on the platform. Right? For for the first 15 years of the internet, they could essentially grow by just getting more users. But now they're so big and powerful that each incremental new user is essentially like someone that they have to get online from, generally speaking, more rural, poorer parts of the world. There's just not a lot of people left. All the billions of people outside of China are using Google and Facebook already, right? And so now their incentive for growth is essentially to enter new markets and fields and to prevent what was happening, which was, people getting organic content on Facebook, clicking on organic links in Google. Now the incentive is Google kind of going, hey, what if instead of letting people click on TripAdvisor and Kayak and Orbitz and Skyscanner, we made our own Google Flights and put that at the top of the results. Right. And what if we did that in health? And what if we did that in finance? And what if we did that in mortgages? And what if we do it in weather? And what if we do it in traffic and travel and maps and and nowadays, right, you see this big problem, and I've written about it on SparkToro a little bit, this sort of zero-click search problem where you can produce a whole bunch of content, rank for it, and Google doesn't send you any traffic because it's sort of a world where they want to promote the ads and Google properties and very little else.
Right.
Now, granted, there's still a ton of traffic to be had in SEO. I don't mean to suggest that it's completely gone. It's not. It's just that this is the trend, right? The trend is going the opposite way that it went the prior 15 years. Facebook, same story, right? Like we all, in the mid 2000s, we're like, yeah, like us on Facebook. And then, we'll build up this big brand group. I'm sure you all like went to the restaurants. I've been to tons of restaurants in San Diego, and like the menu still says, us on Facebook.
Yeah. Like, what's that going to do for you these days?
Exactly. What is that going to do for you, Joe? Like you go and like whatever it is, what's that fried chicken place in Little Italy that's so good?
The Crack Shack.
Yeah. Right.
Good call.
You go like their Facebook page, and the average Facebook page organic reach is currently 0.09%.
Very, very, it's really going to help you out there.
So great. 1 in 10,000 people who likes their Facebook page is going to see their update. What is the point? And this is like 10 years ago, we were complaining when it was falling under 10 and 11%.
Like, I have to pay them now. I have to pay for
1,000 times worse. And we're kind of like, well, what are you going to do? Facebook needs their monies.
So that's interesting. Yeah, that you're right. It's a whole different game being played right now because there's not really many people left on the planet to get on this platform.
I mean, basically in rich countries and even sort of moderately wealthy countries, Google and Facebook have 90% plus penetration, right? Like they're just so used that those that they have to find different revenue streams, and unfortunately, they've chosen to kind of use their monopoly power in one sector to unfairly compete in a bunch of others. And then the frustrating side is ad world too, right? So, Google, one of the biggest frustrations that happened recently was back in September, right? In Google paid search accounts, for years, Google has pulled organic keyword data. Like they'll just say not provided, right? When they send you a visitor from a search, they'll say keyword not provided. And they claim it's for privacy reasons, but it's obviously not, because if you pay them with Google ads, they'll tell you, what the keyword is. So there's that like disgusting hypocrisy, but it's been around so long, like marketers have kind of forgotten to complain about it. The new disgusting hypocrisy is Google in September pulled about 27% of all the keyword data that sends you ad traffic as well. And so now they're hiding which terms and phrases actually sent you traffic. And unfortunately, it's the ones a lot of the ones in the long tail, which means that you can't add those see those keywords and then add them to your Google account as negative keyword matches so that your ads don't get shown for those terms and phrases. And what does this mean? This means that everybody is bidding on more keywords than they really want to. They're showing up for irrelevant terms and phrases that, don't send them high converting traffic. So they're paying Google this sort of extra tax. They're bidding up the price of the Google ad ecosystem, and their quality scores are suffering. Because they're showing for irrelevant stuff, and they're not getting the high click-through rates, they're not getting the conversion rates. That is a crap situation, right? Just terrible to be in. Facebook, same story. Facebook essentially used the Cambridge Analytica scandal as like a way to pull back on all this data that they would show you in your Facebook ad account, and when you're buying Facebook ads, and like which pages you can bid against and which hashtags and terms and phrases and topics. A lot of that's hidden. If you know what to search for or what to type in, you can still find those topics to advertise against or pages to advertise against. But how do you know which ones to do? And so, of course, Facebook gets the same phenomenon where a bunch of people just bid on the same default topics and pages that Facebook's put in there and interests.
Yeah.
So everybody's ad prices are driven up, ROI is going down, value is going down, but Facebook and Google can kind of play the, oh yeah, where are you going to go?
Exactly.
Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
He's got to
come at like, what, you're going to go advertise on Snapchat and Bing? Good luck with that.
It's true. That's an interesting. I mean, yeah. They have this walled garden for a reason, right? I mean, they literally control the rules.
And at the same time, Facebook is out there saying that Apple is trying to hurt small businesses.
I mean, look, I'm no Apple fanboy, but my God, the craven hypocrisy and obvious just sludge and lies in that whole like, oh, let's buy a New York Times ad. I think the backlash was pretty fast and direct, which I'm glad to see. But so, part of it is, hey, let's make people aware of this problem. Let's have these conversations as marketers. Let's make sure that we're doing as much ad auditing as we possibly can and data collection and using as much information to make our accounts as smart as they can possibly be. And there's a lot of professionals who specialize in that. That's great. That's not actually my world, even though I, obviously endorse that and think that's a really good idea. With SparkToro, like what we're trying to do is show people where their audiences pay attention so that they can go reach them directly through those sources, right? So you go to SparkToro and you're like, okay, I want to reach whatever, landscape designers in California. What podcasts do they listen to? What YouTube channels are they subscribing to? What websites do they visit? Who do they follow on social accounts? So that you can go do whatever kind of advertising you want, right? It could be through the Google Ad display network. It could be through Facebook. It could be through Instagram. It could be direct, one-on-one. Like you find this great podcast, you reach out to the host, you sponsor it. Yep. Or you get an introduction to the podcast host from Lisa Beyer, and she's like, hey, you should have so-and-so on your show, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that kind of marketing. I love that kind of advertising. And I'm hopeful that over time, SparkToro can help form more of that knowledge for people and fill that gap of, hey, if I'm willing to do the work and like actually go out and find it instead of throwing money at these platforms, can I get a better ROI through that sort of, direct relationship? Affiliate world, right, is obviously super into this. They're already savvily using things like SimilarWeb or BuzzSumo or something like that, right? To find like, oh, these are the websites and places that attract the right audience. Can I get an affiliate relationship going with them? That kind of thing.
No, I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I tested it out quite a bit, SparkToro with the podcast stuff, with the keyword, and I'm like, I'm just kind of curious what kind of podcast, because that's one of the most common questions we get is like, how do you know which shows to go on, and should I guest? And I'm like, well, this is a pretty dang good solution to shortcut all of that, many options, not just podcasts. But I think it's fascinating because you're basically aggregating all of the data from this web of content, or all these different platforms out there that are kind of mining all that data, it seems like, and you're just making it very simple to leverage these platforms, maybe even those platforms even further in a unique way. But it takes kind of like, it's almost like a creative way of thinking a little bit.
You're totally right. Like a lot of people who come to SparkToro, I think have this sort of classic impression of how a keyword tool is going to work, right? And they think of it like SEO. So instead of, my audience describes themselves as landscape designers, they're like, okay, I want to find people, or landscape architect, I'm looking for people who want landscaping. And it's like, no, that's not right. That's not like the way to think about the audience research inside SparkToro. Like you need to describe the people that you're going after, or give some hashtag that they use, or some social account that they follow, or some word or phrase that they talk about online on their public social profiles. And then, the way that we collect data is, especially it's informed by how we saw some really smart agencies and in-house firms do it, which was essentially they'd take like a list of their customers. So they'd say like, oh yeah, we've got like whatever, 10,000 of our customers who've bought from us. We have their email addresses. We can take those email addresses and upload them to Clearbit or Full Contact, right? An API like that, and get back their Twitter accounts and their LinkedIn pages and their Facebook pages. And then if those social accounts are public, we can go crawl them and see what words and phrases these people use to describe themselves, where do they say they're located, and what hashtags are they using, and who are they following, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then they use that data to inform their marketing. They'd be like, okay, of our 10,000 customers who bought from us in the last year, we found 3,700 public social profile matches, and here's what those people pay attention to. Boom. Look at that. 19% of them listen to this podcast or whatever. Let's go advertise there. Brilliant. So smart.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, they spent like 50 grand and 3 engineers for 6 months to like build all that infrastructure out. So Casey, my co-founder, and I saw that and we're like, oh,
yeah,
we should build that for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for building that. Because just sponsorships, like you said, I love the whole idea of going direct with someone. And, this is the affiliate marketer in us, the collaborators that, we're always trying to figure out how can we collaborate with, this is a fast track way to listen to your audience in some form, or maybe it's not your audience and you're breaking into a new niche. Well, cool. Look at what they're talking about, the hashtags they're using and all that. And now you have this kind of macro and maybe micro picture of that whole industry before even getting into it. But now you can just jump right into it with a lot of data.
Yeah. I mean, on the affiliate side, I think a big part of the challenge, like I just got a pitch for a partnership today, right? So someone reached out and they were like, hey, we have this, network of websites that we work with, and we do a revenue share, and would SparkToro want to be a part of this, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's it's an interesting idea, but I'm looking at the website, network of websites that they've got. And I'm like, I don't know if these are attracting like my audience. So the cool part was I, took one of the sites, plugged it into SparkToro and was like, okay, tell me about the people who visit and share and link to and follow this website and their social account. And I was like, these are not our customers, right? So I don't think this is going to be a good like relationship. It's going to be very low conversion rate or very low click-through rate even.
Yep.
So it doesn't make sense. But maybe there's other sites in the network where I'd go, oh yeah, I really want to be on that one.
Yeah.
And we make something happen. But that affinity between audience captured and people you want to reach seems like a really constant challenge in any type of affiliate world, right? Because otherwise you don't want it to be a low affinity relationship, or it's like wasted space.
Well, yeah. And we recently chatted with Pat Flynn, and he has this whole book about, super fans called Super Fans. So it's if you have these fans, I mean, this tool seems like, SparkToro seems like it allows you to shortcut your way and to start talking at least to those types of people. So you can kind of, not have to talk to the masses. You're getting a lot more honed in on the specific audience that's probably going to convert a little better. With a lot more ease and buy your stuff on the back end.
Yeah. I'm curious, like just for my own, sake and sanity, have you folks been discussing a lot about the like death of third-party cookies? Like,
we haven't yet. Okay. Somebody actually brought that to my attention on Facebook and said you should bring on an expert on the cookies and how that all works and talk to them about it. And so we've been putting feelers out there to try to find who that expert would be, but we haven't. Is that something that you've been talking a lot about that maybe we can chat about with you a little bit?
I mean, a little bit. I am not. I'm not a super expert on this, but I think her name is it Shoshana? Shoshana Wodinsky. So she writes for Wired and a few other publications. Oh, Gizmodo. Here, I can chat you her. Here, this is actually awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
So she basically, I don't know if you saw this like weird thing over the holidays. Did you see that ad with the assless pajamas?
I've heard about it. I didn't get to see the.
I never saw.
Yeah, it's like they have like the butt flap on them, right? Like the classic log cabin, whatever.
Pull down.
Yeah, right. Like I don't know, like a mountain man in a Bugs Bunny cartoon from the 50s, except it's on, like a very whatever sexy undressed woman this time. And so this ad was really interesting because it like appeared on a few websites, including a very popular viral Elle article in December. And then it was like following people around the internet just like crazy over the holidays. And so what Shoshana, I think, had intuited from her research was that this butt flap pajama ad was not really trying to get you to buy the pajamas. Like that was not the goal. The goal was to collect data on as many devices as it possibly could. And it was via these like very weird, suspicious looking, mostly Chinese and Taiwanese connected networks, ad networks that are essentially doing some form of browser fingerprinting, right? So they're trying to like identify your device with all of its different qualities and then store that data and every website that you visited and pages that you visited and that kind of thing so that it can tie your device to your activity with the goal of in the future selling that data to advertisers or maybe geopolitical players, unclear, right?
Who knows? Yeah, what motivation?
Like very, very mysterious and weird. But fascinating, totally fascinating. And then there's also this like, well, is that the future of how advertising gets done? Right? Like, is it based on behavior that's fingerprinted by networks that operate outside of like California privacy laws and outside of GDPR and all this kind of stuff? And then like, okay, for those of us who are in like content world or affiliate world, like, what does this mean? Do we have to like go through these really sketchy, potentially politically affiliated, I don't know.
Hey, you don't want to get caught up in this whole thing of privacy and that just sounds like it's going to be messy and bad, but who knows? I mean, it's a whole different paradigm way of thinking that we have to approach how to attract relevant people to the I don't know. It's a very good question.
It's one of those the unintended consequences of good intentions, right? Like good intention. Firefox is like, hey, third-party cookies, there's a lot of privacy issues with those. Let's block those. Not realizing like, wait a minute, what will that lead to? Like, how will that impact ad world and privacy world? And, and now Safari, right? So Apple, of course, is going to do this as well. And that was Facebook's big complaint with them was that, I think basically you like pull up the Facebook app on your Apple device and you would have to like, it would automatically opt you out of Facebook's data collection of those third-party cookies, and you would have to opt in. And so Facebook was pissed about this, and Apple was like, no, we're not going to budge, yada, yada.
So it's definitely, I mean, I would think the opt-in action is probably going to be a big component of a lot of, whatever the fingerprinting or tracking is going to look like in the future, maybe. But maybe there's a whole thinking of there. It's like, okay, how do we get someone to agree to that then? And someone's going to crack the code, but I think we have to talk to your friend.
So I don't know Shoshana personally, but I am friendly with Nandini Jami, who's one of the co-founders of Sleeping Giants, and now Check My Ads, and she and Shoshana are connected. So I'd be happy to reach out, make a connection. I would love to listen to that podcast myself. Like, I want to know what the heck is going on. I read her articles and was still like, what? Why? How? Who? For what reason?
All the questions are happening. We'll start with their article, but if you can make that happen, thank you. We'll make an amazing episode for all of us to indulge in.
I mean, all of this to me kind of sounds like a good strategy would be to focus on email list building, right? Because that's what you have control of, and stop thinking of it in terms of trying to pixel as many people as possible, because that's just becoming less valuable.
It's becoming less valuable. It's becoming more risk, exposure, both on legal side and privacy and scandal side. I am 100% with you, Matt. Like, I cannot understand the years that we've spent, getting people to be like, subscribe to my Twitter, subscribe to my Facebook, subscribe to my LinkedIn, subscribe to my TikTok, subscribe to my YouTube. I understand that those are like places where you can earn attention, but to my mind, that's the secondary goal. And the primary goal is get people to your website and your email list.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the one channel you always get to own and control. And email open rates, what are we, 0.09% like Facebook page exposure. Email open rates are still like 21% on average.
Right.
Hasn't changed in 2 decades.
And it can only get better through segmentation and giving more of what the people want. So it's like, and that's kind of the next evolution. It's kind of this whole thing of, I used to be partners with a guy named Amish Shah years and years ago, but he was big in the platforms. Like he knew how to leverage a platform and take it into a space like basically the email list. It's something you can control. That was just kind of baked in my mind. It's always like, okay, there's a bunch of platforms out there. And like you said, Rand, like, yes, you can have a following on there and that's great. That's kind of where it maybe starts, but don't leave them there. Like figure out how to pull them off somehow and take control of the folks that are actually attaching to you.
Yeah.
That's same with the podcast here. First call to action. Get Facebook group, but also you're going to get added to the email list if you choose to. Yeah. I mean, you
email
gotta
is so big. Yeah.
Gotta have control. So what other?
I would honestly it's not that Facebook doesn't get engagement. It absolutely does, right? And Facebook groups can get a lot of engagement, a lot of discussion. You're sort of in the stream with everyone else. But if it were me, if it was a choice between like 100 new Facebook likes and 1 email address.
Oh yeah,
I'll take that 1 email.
Oh, for sure.
Go tell that to the Crack Shack in San Diego.
Yeah, right.
They want the Facebook like.
I'll send them this video.
I'm just saying, like, you get the chicken sandwich in your email, and maybe whatever. You're not going to click on it. Maybe you're not going to click through, but I guarantee you will see it versus showing up in someone's stream. It's just not going to happen. I think Instagram is the. So this is data from Rival IQ, which does a really nice, their software that operates across a bunch of social platforms on behalf of brands, right? So they have all this data about brands' web pages and or social pages and how they perform. And every year they release a report that's like, here's the average engagement that like social brands got on social. And I think last year, it was the 0.09% for Facebook. Wow. I want to say it was like 0.05% for Twitter. So, really, really low for public company Twitter pages, Twitter accounts. And these are averages, right? Or median. So, some people are doing really well with Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But Instagram was the highest average performing at 2.2%. So like, it's not that, that's not no reach. Like that is something. I understand why small businesses are especially ones that are good at visuals are thinking Instagram. I just say anytime you are investing in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, Medium, Quora, I don't care what it is. Why not also put that on your own website? Yes. Why not also make sure that like the call to action is back to your site and onto your email list? You've really got nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so the next thing I want to talk about is sort of a little bit of a pivot from what we're talking about, but coming back around to like SparkToro. So you can go on SparkToro and you can essentially upload an email list and it'll sort of tell you the affinities of the people on your list. You can find, okay, this audience listens to these podcasts, these blog posts, these magazines, that sort of thing. Once you grab that data, do you have any best practices for actually getting in touch with the people who run the podcast, the blog, the magazine? Like what sort of advice would you give people who, after they get this data?
Yeah. Great question. So first off, just one quick thing. You can upload a custom audience to SparkToro, but not email addresses.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's got to be the social accounts. So again, we recommend people use Clearbit or Full Contact. They've jumped through all the like California privacy laws around connecting those up. We have not done that. So
Smart.
We don't. We don't deal with the email address, privacy data, all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
However,
thanks for clarifying.
We do support. So if you send a list of email addresses through Clearbit, through Full Contact, get the social URLs and upload that to us, we will do that custom analysis. Or the super simple way to do this in SparkToro is just to take your brand's social handle and analyze that.
Makes sense.
Oftentimes, like This is not to dissuade anyone from buying the more expensive package where you can do the custom upload thing, but like you can a lot of times just run, whatever it is at Crack Shack into SparkToro as like my audience follows the social account at Crack Shack. And then that will be really, really similar to uploading 1,000 social URLs from your email list.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
both are possible. When you do that and you sort of get these analyses, or when you analyze an audience and you're like, aha, those are the podcasts I want to reach out to. Those are YouTube channels I want to talk to. That's the publication I want to reach. I want to sponsor that website. I want to pitch a guest editorial for this content site, et cetera, et cetera. I do have a couple pieces of advice there. So one is that cold outreach is really difficult to get answers. I mean, you guys know this, right? Like you reach out to, hello, people at wired.com. I would like to write article about SEO affiliate marketing for you.
Delete.
Nobody spam, report spam, delete, block address. Like it's
we see it on the flip side, just having this podcast with people reaching out to be on the show too. So, we have a whole list of what not to do with the outreach we're trying to get on our show.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So for those pitches, my 2 bits of advice are: one, don't cold outreach without first engaging on social. For example, you have a few conversations on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, and you promote that person, that journalist's work from Wired, and then you send them an email and it's like, hey, it was fun chatting about like that piece you wrote last week or a couple weeks ago. And like, I'm Rand, I'm at Randfish on Twitter. You probably saw me in your feed. That you will almost always get a response. Yep. I'm not saying it'll always be positive. I'm not saying you're always but you'll break through because you've formed that connection somewhere else first. So that is piece of advice 1. Piece of advice 2, get an intro. Right? Like we were talking about Lisa introducing us.
Yeah.
There is no better way to make sure that you get a response and a connection than an intro. I would say, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's whatever. If cold outreach works 1 out of 100 times, a social connection first maybe works 10 out of 100 times. And a warm intro from someone who's known to both parties is like 70 out of 100.
Yeah, at least. And that's from our experience too. Yeah.
Yeah, just huge. So
those are good tips. And I mean, I'm kind of curious with all the data too that you have at SparkToro, I'm sure there's probably some ways to use or build content on the back of that. Like, are there any suggestions on how that would look like? Maybe your own content and also some guest content.
I mean, one of the really nice things that you can do, and some of the folks, who actually invite people to try and participate in their podcast. So we have a few like podcasters who use SparkToro to find their guests, right? Because essentially their goal is, I want to reach this audience with my, podcast or my video series, my content series. So let me invite on the people who already reach that group because they will bring that audience with them. And so one of the ways that I'm trying to remember, was it Lemon Pie? It was one of those guys was using SparkToro, and essentially the pitch was, hey, like we are already followed by 18% of your audience, right? So like there's a lot of affinity that already exists here. Let's do something together. I think that's actually a great pitch, right? To say, that's like, amazing. Hey, Smashing Magazine, I saw that 10% of the people who follow you on social have the title creative director. And I'm a creative director at this company. That's the audience that I speak to and write for. I think I could do a really good guest piece for you.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's sort of like, oh, okay, I see you're bringing data to this conversation about why we have audience affinity with the topic you're bringing to me. It's an easier sell.
I'll just say that I've never seen a single pitch to us with data like that in there. And if it were, I would be very intrigued. I'd be like, A, where'd you get this data? I want to learn more. And B, yeah, why not? You've done your homework somehow, at least.
I mean, I think this is, the way to stand out from the crowd is to work harder and smarter than them.
Yeah.
And the crowd right now, for better or worse, is not doing this stuff.
It's a lot of push button happening, especially on the pitch side of things too. We won't name any software names that allow this to be very easy, but it's there's a lot of them, unfortunately, for a lot of people. Yeah. But well, in terms of, I'm just thinking the content in general should be a lot. I mean, in what I was thinking, actually, when you said the data point, that's a perfect way to probably get sponsors and pitch, start putting out there pitches to folks to get a sponsorship, at least on your podcast. You could probably, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking of all that data. I don't have a perfect actually statement right now, because I'm like, when I hear all of this, my brain goes wild when I'm like, okay, Rand, you just gave us a freaking bucket of information and data. It's like, how can we creatively use this thing now? That's where my brain goes, like, it lights up, and probably tonight I'll have like 50 questions for you. Yeah. But Matt, I'm going to defer to you on.
I look forward to the Friday night deluge.
No, I won't. I won't hurt you with that, but I'll give it to Matt.
It's going to be a fascinating night anyway. I don't know if you have seen, like, the internet is melting down right now because
no, I'm not.
Facebook and Twitter both announced they're going to permanently suspend Trump.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
platforms.
I saw that news.
Like, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes after we started our conversation. So
oh, really?
I was like,
okay,
what's going on? Like, all my tabs are like,
oh, geez.
Oh, yeah, fascinating.
We're in our safe place here for now.
I mean, as long as I'm not on a flight back from Washington, D.C. today, I'm happy.
It's true. Well, how else? I'm getting curious on the advertising side, because I know we touched on, you wrote this article, at the time of this episode, like a few days ago. So, there's Facebook and Google ads. I mean, we use both of them. You're in there a lot more than I do, so you see the data. What are your thoughts around that, and how these are changing with everything you described with Facebook and Google, and how they're kind of raising rates on are there certain ways to advertise on there that you would suggest? Or
yeah, I mean, I think plenty of people can earn decent ROI on those platforms. I don't mean to suggest that that's not possible, but I think the vast majority of advertisers are unsophisticated, right? Yeah. Small and medium businesses, some agencies who are incented because, they get a % of ad spend. Some folks who are either some combination of like new to the platform or just sort of follow Google and Facebook's suggested path, right? Yeah. I mean, Matt, I'm sure you've seen this, right? Like, I hadn't been in Facebook ads for a little while. I went back in there maybe a couple months ago and was like, oh, what is this? Like, the recommendation for what you should do is so broad and untargeted, and just really struck me as very abusive of an advertiser who might not have a lot of money and needs to earn ROI. And like, if you don't know what you're doing and how things sort of used to operate and how you can still like tweak the system if you know enough to get it to work for you, I feel really bad for those folks, right? And they're the ones who need it the worst. Like the big companies, the big agencies, they're going to be fine. Like they've got the dollars to blow anyway. So that bothers me a lot. And then I think, I'm not sure exactly what to call this problem. I've heard some people describe it as the ad slurry, which is essentially like, you take, so like a meat slurry, right, would be, there's a bunch of like good parts of the cow,
right,
and then a bunch of like older cow parts and, worse cow parts. And we're just, it's ground beef. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, we made it a product.
Yeah, we turned it into a product. And look, I mean, thankfully, USDA agricultural requirements have meant that ground beef, with the exception of Taco Bell, pretty good, right? pretty good.
True.
Baseline, like decent. You're going to survive.
Yeah.
But in the ad slurry world, it's very, very odd, right? Because Google will take YouTube advertising is a great example of this, right? So you advertise on YouTube and you basically have to opt out of everything that you don't want rather than opting in to things that you do want. And so Google can, send your YouTube ads to misinformation and disinformation and conspiracy theory rabbit holes and like flat earther madness and, whatever, like people who are against al dente pasta, who, that.
Well, you're a pasta guy. So yeah, but I know.
Unacceptable. Like what are we talking? You're advertising on a channel that's recommending that you make spongy pasta. Like, get out of here. Right?
Give me the little texture there. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Italiano. So it is very frustrating for an advertiser to be facing that sort of like, my ads go in plenty of good places, some pretty bad places, and some really terrible places that I don't want them to be at all. And I don't have fine-tuned controls. In fact, I don't even see the bad places that my ad is in until they've been there. And then I can go, opt out of them. Unless I'm savvy enough to like work with an auditing firm who's assembled a list of bad places already for me, from all their other campaigns, and like put it all together.
Money.
That's the slurry.
Yeah.
Right? It's the slurry. They're throwing good and bad together. You're getting mystery meat in terms of where your advertising's happening. Your ad shows up in the Google Display Network on the Washington Post and the New York Times and Wired.com. Great. And then it shows up on like, let's go storm the Capitol on Tuesday. Oh gosh, I don't.
What if my target audience is there?
Yeah. Someone was talking on the day this, as we're recording this week, right? There was like all these websites and places where folks were talking about like, hey, we're gonna get in our gear and like go storm the Capitol, and some wise folks on Twitter were pointing out that like, oh, Calm and BMW and Airbnb were sponsoring those posts, those videos, those channels, those websites. They didn't know they were, right? It's not like, it's sort of their fault for not auditing their ads, but also is Google showing them that data proactively? Hell no, right?
And then think about like for a small business owner who I know Facebook right now, or at least at the beginning of COVID, they were like going hard on sign up for Facebook or business.facebook.com. And I think you and I saw it and we're like, that's not good. Like they're fishing in that bar. They're trying to, grow that pond now, stock full of fish so they can do exactly what they're saying right now because they have control. And these businesses, like, I don't know, we'll just use them as an example. I hope they have there's someone to help them out. But like most of them don't know the slurry and what they're getting into.
I mean, it's not as bad on Facebook, but Facebook, they've got the, there's like a checkbox where it's automatically going to all placements, right? And you could go in and really you should go in there and select the placements you want it on. But by default, somebody who's just setting up an ad, they're going to get their ad just put everywhere Facebook will allow it, right? And a lot of times that might be like in the middle of somebody's text message conversation on Facebook or smack dab in the middle of a longer video that they're trying to watch. And those videos don't really get people to take action because they're not in a place where people are going to want to take action from them. So you really have to go in and sort of select your placements. But if you're just getting in there for the first time, set up your first ad, Facebook is not going to do very right by you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's, if I saw correctly, I can't remember if it was an email or just a notification in the ad center on Facebook, but they like notify you if you've previously checked that box when they update, because they want you to check the just let us show you everywhere, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, they keep nudging. Google, same thing, right? On both display and YouTube, like they keep nudging hey, you should let us programmatically control it because your ads might not be being seen by as many people as they could be. And so that slurry problem is really messy. To be fair, Facebook and Google, not great about this at all. Those third parties that make up the other 30-ish, 35% of the display ad market are even worse. Like they are so much worse in terms of
what platforms are we talking? Like the Outbrains of the world and
Outbrain and Taboola, not great by any means. There's a whole bunch of third parties. Was one of them? Okada or no. Sorry, what is this? Citrus, the Citrus ads platform. I saw some people like talking about what was showing up in there. And I was like, oh man, that sounds real weird. And they're mostly focused on like the whatchamacallit, grocery world. Very strange, right? Whatchamacallit, there's a few that are quite good because they're just incredibly direct, right? So there's a few ad exchanges. I think buy sell ads is one.
Yes. Yeah. They've been around for a while, I think.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. And buy sell ads, as I understand it, is basically there's no like personalization and cookie system. You basically say, do you want to appear on this site? Well, then go through buy sell ads and your sponsorship will appear on that site. And like, here's how much it costs. I like that model, right?
I know it's like old school again.
Like the affiliate, it's kind of like the affiliate marketing model where you reach out to someone directly. You say, hey, I think we've got a real audience affinity here. Let's do some, business development. It's kind of, it's a little bit 1950s advertising in terms of sophistication, but it works.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you use it top of funnel, if we're using those kind of terms, like, hey, you can build an audience off of that and then do your follow-up magical stuff after that. But again, within your control, ideally.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, buy sell ads definitely has its own issues as well, because you get people on that site who they'll sell advertising on a website and then they buy junk traffic to their website so that they can ramp up their CPMs.
There's always a way. There's always a way.
But at least you get to see the website and then be like, is this the website I want to be on? And
yeah, you can do some due diligence before you buy ads and prevent that, but there are a lot of bad actors on there as well.
Right.
Yeah. Do you folks use SimilarWeb for some of that like analysis?
A little bit here and there, yeah, on certain occasions. When we don't use it enough though, I guess.
I like like one of the things that people use SparkToro for, which I sort of also like SimilarWeb for, is the people who visit X also visit.
That's
right.
Good.
So SimilarWeb, even in the free version, right, you can just like go in and type in, whatever, outdoorclimbing.com. And it's like, oh yeah, Outside Online is in there. And like Rock Climbing Magazine is well visited. And so is REI or Patagonia or whatever it is. Right. And like, I like that ability to just see where else is that traffic going.
Yep. And it's kind of like for an affiliate product, in our case, it's typically a marketing software is what we'll promote. So we can plug in a competitor or maybe that software itself. If there's enough traffic or people talking about it, then you can get all sorts of interesting data, I'm sure. And this is where my brain's going to go wild tonight. Later. I'll tell you later. I'm kind of curious. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's sort of like in the search marketing world, right? A lot of folks will use something like Moz, my old company, or Ahrefs or SEMrush or something like that, and they'll like plug in a keyword phrase that they know is sending them good traffic, right? It's through Google paid search or whatever, and then try and find other words and phrases that that audience also uses or that are also related, so that they can target similar sorts of folks. And I think that methodology is really smart, right? I think that's a great way to go. It's also, it's sort of the anti-slurry, like it's a very targeted approach.
Yeah. And I feel like if you have your best foot forward that way, and like we said, if you have a marketing engine behind that and somehow that you can control, then it's probably the best way you can approach kind of the situation right now online and really just speak to that target avatar from day one, ideally.
Yeah.
So, well, to wrap it up, I know, I don't know if we have enough time for this. I was going to ask you, is there anything in 2021 in SEO world, so on the organic side, that you would say like, all right, pay attention to this, or maybe there's an article you can direct us to?
I haven't written it yet, but I have a prediction that I think the last couple years and the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot less of Google's ranking algorithm using links themselves to rank stuff, and a lot more of them using inferred connections, inferred links, right? So essentially, Rand Fishkin from SparkToro went on Matt and Joe's podcast and talked about this thing, and there's no, followable link, that Google's crawler can see between the two, but the mention of SparkToro and like around the words of market research and audience intelligence tells Google that maybe they should rank SparkToro's website higher for these sorts of terms and phrases. And if that connection happens lots and lots, they get the inference of a connection between the content, and the more, authoritative and important and well listened to the podcast is, the more that counts. So I think we're going to see a lot less of the I don't know what to call that, old school, pure domain authority, link equity, page rank, that kind of stuff, and a lot more of an inferred, intelligent connection that the search engine forms between phrases, concepts, brands, and entities, and then websites.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Well, it just seems like that's how machine learning works, right? Like machine learning is designed to optimize to an outcome, and it'll take any input it can find that optimizes better to that outcome. I think that's the outcome that, that predicts these signals.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because it'll sort of help the sort of gaming of the system that everybody's done for so long with SE. I mean, theoretically, I'm sure people find new ways to game the new systems. And with that in mind, what advice would you give people, assuming that is the direction things are going? How should people adjust their content to take that into account?
Yeah, I would be thinking about big investments in digital PR. Right. Mm-hmm. So like if you have a brand and you can get that brand talked about in places where your customers pay attention, you can get the brand connection to be seen by Google, and you can kind of not care about the link and still get the value of the link.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the rankings. And at the same time, you're speaking directly to your customers and potential customers. So you're probably driving up conversion rates and bringing people to your site. And at the same time, you are also getting brand awareness, which means that when people search, right, we know this from research, when people search for whatever, some random thing, when I search for climbing shoes, if I see, REI, and that's a brand that I know that I like and I trust them and whatever, I heard the founder talking about their great mission on this podcast I was listening to, and they were on the YouTube channel, and I saw this nice press piece about them in the New York Times, I'm going to be more likely to click them regardless of if they're in position 1. And the other thing we know about Google's behavior right now is, if you're position 4 or 5 and more people start clicking on you than are clicking on the people above you, you will quickly rise.
Yeah.
Like Google will be like, whoa, what's going on here? The people all like REI. All right, put them at the top.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I like this. I'm just seeing like this kind of map. I mean, there's a guy we actually connected with, and he runs this emoji kind of, he has this intelligence where it like pairs up. If you plug in a keyword, kind of like SparkToro, it'll tell you what kind of emojis and hashtags, and it's using data science. It's called Hello Wolfie.
I have seen
if
that.
You're curious.
Gosh, I feel like
it's pretty interesting.
Some other stuff too, right?
Well, if you go to wolfie.ai, it actually shows this interesting map, and it's all for show. He was telling us essentially, Arjun is the founder's name, but that's what I'm picturing happening in the background of Google. Maybe is this like personalized search engine rankings depending on whatever you're searching. But it's like you said, it's this web of things, and it's like Google crawling things like podcasts, which I've heard is happening, but I don't think they've really put the data out. But that could be feeding that web kind of in the background. It's got to happen. If it's happening in all these other industries, why wouldn't it happen in Google and everywhere else too? So interesting perspective. Something to think on. Dang it, Rand. I'm not going to sleep tonight. Your fault.
That just happens on podcast days.
It happens all the time. That's why it feels like a hangover. After we're done with these, we're like, it was so fun, but you got to pay the consequences sometimes. All right. So we'll get you out of here, man. Enough of me talking. SparkToro. I know you could get some free usages out of it. So tell the folks about that. So it wasn't like
sure. Yeah. So the vast majority of folks who use SparkToro just use the forever free account, which is 10 searches a month. You can run, see if it's valuable for you, do a bunch of research, probably find a lot of these opportunities without paying a thing. All you got to do is just run a search. It'll ask you for your email address. You confirm that. It'll give you the data. And then it refreshes every month. So yeah, have at it. Stab at it. We're a very new company. We launched in April of last year. It's just me and my co-founder Casey. So we'd love to hear from folks who are trying it out and whether they found it valuable and what they used it for. That sort of stuff is super useful for us. And you can drop me a line anytime, rand@sparktoro.com.
Very cool. And you've got the book Lost and Founder as well, so we should check that out.
There it is. Yeah.
Anywhere else you'd want to point people after listening to this episode?
Sure. Yeah. So if you want to learn more about that, the conversation we were having about the online advertising and the ad slurry and all of that, on the SparkToro blog, I just wrote a piece that's gotten some good attention called the state of online advertising, something rotten in the state of online advertising. And that's the sparktoro.com/blog.
Cool.
Very cool. And we'll make sure it's linked up as well. So.
For sure. All right, Rand. Appreciate it, man. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Fascinating talking with you guys. I really appreciate you having me. And please let me know if I can make some introductions to some other interesting folks on this front.
Appreciate it, my man.
That.
All right. Have a great one.
All right. You too. Take care.